Greetings, fellow thinkers and drinkers. And this is a brief coda to our series of reviews on the Motörhead catalogue. I had intended to finish this series with the last video, which was the last released studio album, Bad Magic. But recently, from the vaults, has come the Manticore Tapes. So, why stop now? With one to go, we might as well have a listen and take a look. Now, this was recorded back in the day, 1976, so just 1 year after the band's formation. And this was the very early days of what's gone down in folklore as the classic Motörhead lineup of Lemmy, Fast Eddie Clarke, and Filthy Animal Taylor. These recordings were recorded in London's Manticore studios, hence the name of the album. These studios were owned by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So this experience must have been something of a culture shock for the studio, if for nothing else. Always a little suspect when hearing about these things prior to listening to them. It's not always. There are obviously exceptions, but it happens too often that is when you get early demos or unreleased tracks or whatever they're called. Well, not so much unreleased tracks, but early demos, only to find out that they are just basically the same version of the song we've all grown to know and love, just without the production values on the finished album. And again, that just does open up a question to its intrinsic value. Although, again, that will be a very subjective judgment. What do we get here? Well, there's 11 songs, 11 tracks included on this release. And it starts with an instrumental, titled with much originality as Intro. It is interesting. It really is. It's clearly recognizable as early Motörhead. Trust me, you will have no problem working out who's playing. And it's actually a pretty good jam, I have to say. And it's clear that even at this stage, what fine players they are. Musically, it's a touch more melodic, I would have to say, than what they would go on to morph into. But when I say it's more melodic, that's not a criticism, it's just an interesting statement. That's not an aspect of their music they would go on to develop particularly, but no, I like it, it's good. Now, the next track up is Leaving Here. Now, the observant and the knowledgeable amongst you will obviously recognize this or remember it from our review of On Parole, which was their first officially recorded. It wasn't the first of the bloody hell. Go back and watch the video. It was a slightly complicated release history, but it was recorded with Lemmy and Lucas Fox and Larry Wallace prior to Fast Eddie and Filthy joining the band. This is effectively the same song, but played with Eddie and Filthy. And it's a great bit of rock and roll. It does sound, in principle, very, very similar in structure and everything to the On Parole version. Although this is slightly faster. The On Parole version was taken at a slower pace. And I think the increase in tempo here, it adds something. It makes it a better song. We move on to Vibrator, which again did feature on Parole. And again, this is on the face of it, a very similar version. The most obvious difference is that Lemmy is taking the vocals on this occasion. I think it was Lucas Fox, was it not, who sang on Parole. And again, this time it's noticeably quicker than the on Parole version, and it's actually a bouncy, upbeat little ditty, humorous lyrics, And I think the increase in tempo actually improves it. We then move on to Help Keep Us on the Road. Now, I do believe that this is an unreleased track that's available for the first time here, although I could be wrong. I do not own every last release of the band. Might have been on one of those EPs or something they did back in the day, although I don't think so. Again, it's recognizably Motörhead, slightly slower pace than most of their stuff. Some of their early stuff was a bit slower, wasn't it? But certainly for what's on this album, I do like it. It's a decent enough song, no two ways about it. It's a bit of lack of familiarity with it. It's one of those things, had it been on Overkill or Bomber or Ace of Spades or something, we would have, and it would not have been a standout track on any of them, by no means. But, the familiarity does. While I say it does breed contempt, it does also breed a certain degree of affection, doesn't it? It's not a standout recording or composition, but it's decent enough. And as I said, had it been on any of those early albums, we'd be familiar with it and may view it slightly differently. Okay, The Watcher up next, which, no prizes for guessing what I'm about to say, was also featured on Parole. And once again, I have to say, this version is fairly close to the On Parole version. I did a back-to-back comparison, and yeah, okay. Couple of differences, though, that do stand out. Fast Eddie's guitar parts are different to those of Larry Wallace. And I think they're better. The guitar playing is more aggressive. It's more prominent in the track. It's just better. The next track is Motörhead, which interestingly, or perhaps almost interestingly, I ripped the CD to my iMac in order to, I don't have a hi-fi with me, around me. I play everything over my computer. I've got some decent speakers, so I get a reasonable sound and everything. Like when I'm reviewing stuff, it's not as if I'm listening to it on an iPhone or anything. I can't tell difference between recordings. But interestingly, in ripping it, when I opened iTunes to play it, this song had been labeled the Manticore Tapes. So there must be some error, perhaps in the metadata even, when during the production process, because it is quite clearly a version of Motörhead. Again, Motörhead featured on Parole. And again, the fundamental difference here is the contributions of Fast Eddie and Filthy. And you can, you can tell the drumming slightly different, and Filthy is a busier player, I think. Phil takes up more space in the sound, shall we put it that way. And yes, Fast Eddie is a different guitar player to Larry Wallace, and that is, again, obvious. Does it sound fundamentally different to the version on Parole? Well, yes and no. I mean, in structure, obviously not as the same song, but considering that this was recorded after the On Parole version, although by the time this was recorded, the On Parole version had yet to be released, and perhaps even mixed, I don't know. But this sounds slightly more underdeveloped for some reason. Strange given the chronology, I don't know. And you can't say that's because they'd restructured it or something, or they'd added or subtracted bits from it. It is fundamentally the same song. But maybe it's just the recording. Maybe they were just pissed. I don't know. But it does sound slightly more underdeveloped than it did on Parole. Okay, we then get another instrumental titled Witch Doctor, which I think did appear on the Beer Drinkers from Hell EP. I don't have that, but I seem to recall it being on there. Again, an instrumental is another fine. It's a really nice take. It's again, it's hard to say, isn't it? Unless a song is written as a deliberate instrumental. In that case, the top line, instead of being sung, is performed either by the lead guitar or by a keyboard player or something like that. Where I very much get the feeling that this was a backing track that for some reason Lemmy never got around to giving a vocal melody and lyrics to. So it's very hard to judge because, again, that contributes so much to a song, doesn't it? The top line. But as it is, yeah, it's fine, like it. Another instrumental, which is an instrumental take of Iron Horse, Born to Lose, which, once again, did feature on Parole. And again, it's instantly recognizable. But again, you don't need the top line for it. We're very familiar with this song and its structure. This is a fairly, I say, standard take of it. I don't notice any fundamental differences between this take and the On Parole take, apart from the fact this is missing the vocals. Is it taken a touch faster, perhaps? Again, difficult to say. Your ears can deceive you. But again, when comparing them back to back, I have the feeling that this is somehow taken a touch faster. Maybe it's just the difference in players. Maybe it's just the fact that, let's say, Filthy in particular and Eddie just naturally played a little bit faster or something. It may be deliberate. It may be coincidental. I may be wrong. All right, now we go back to Leavin' here for the second time in this collection of 12 tracks, which is what is advertised as an alternate take. Now, I have in previous videos reviewing rarities and re-releases and stuff of other bands. I think in particular Black Sabbath incurred my ire for this. And the point is basically this, that if something's an alternate take, you expect it to be different. And yes, it is different, because one take is obviously not the same as another take. Yes, technically it is different. But by different, I mean it offers something else. It's not just the second take of exactly the same arrangement and the same playing and that sort of thing. Otherwise, it just becomes a little meaningless. And I have to say here, there's not too much of a difference. And I'm not comparing it to the On Parole version. I'm comparing it purely to the previous take on this album. Sounds very close to it. I mean, I do not compare them note for note and bar for bar, obviously. I listened to them back to back a couple of times, and you form an opinion. But it's pretty much an identical take. Though, on this one, I have to say, for whatever reason, maybe a technical reason, Lemmy's bass is less prominent than on the other take. But other than that, it sounds pretty much the same. Vibrator up next, again, second time on this album. Again, very similar take to the previous one on this album. I would say it seems to be there's a slightly elongated middle eight and guitar solo, and I think a different guitar solo on this. So, all right, fair enough. Well, there is some difference in the takes, but it's not fundamentally different. I mean, you've really got to be looking for this. And then the album finishes with the Watcher alternative take, which again is similar to the previous version on this album. I don't hear any fundamental difference, other than, again, and you've really got to go back and compare. But I'm fairly sure that Fast Eddie's doing different leads on this one, and I think they're better. Certainly, they're more catchy. They're more they grab the attention more, shall we say? And that's it, really. The tapes were apparently restored. Again, not too sure what that means. By Cameron Webb, the band's long-term, fixture, latter-day producer. I mean, we have no understanding what condition they were in before. He did whatever he did to them, but they sound pretty good to me. Obviously, it has a demo-type quality to it, obviously. It lacks even the refinement, shall we say, of the On Parole production, which, believe me, if you go back and watch the first video in this series, that's not a particularly refined production, even by the standards of the 1970s. But this doesn't have that. It's demos. But that's not to decry it. Everything's clear and listenable. This is not This is not some crappy bootleg recorded at the back of the hall in the middle of winter and somebody still had 7 layers of clothing on top of the microphone. No, you can hear everything that's going on. But it's still, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, anybody looking for a pristine production, well, I can't imagine anybody would be, but you never know. Now, the obvious thing that I've mentioned on just about every song we've discussed is the comparison to On Parole. Are the tracks fundamentally different, the ones that cross over? No. They're not. It has to be said. And again, I think, unless I'm wrong, there's just one unreleased track on this, and that one has to take that into account. Oh, excuse me. And as I've hinted at earlier, I'm a bit on the fence when it comes to these things. It's nice to listen to them, but yeah. And yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a fair bit of repetition, not only in comparison with On Parole, but also, there are 3 in 11 songs. Well, there are only 8, because 3 are on here twice. And as I said, there are some subtle differences between them, but again, it's not particularly something you could say this is a song in gestation, or you say, oh wow, you can see how they, this is what it started like. This was, we've been working on it for 2 weeks. This is what it sounded like. We've been working on it for a month. This is what it sounded like, and this is the recorded version where there's a narrative, if you like, and you can follow its growth, its development. But there's nothing like that here. There's just people are playing alternative solos, a couple of extra bars here, a couple of less bars there. A little faster, a little slower. It's, again, it's for everyone to decide. What value they put on these things. I can't say, and again, everybody will have to decide for themselves whether these things, whether it is offering anything new or anything particularly insightful. I do like it though. I'm not down on it. It is what it is. It's obviously historical interest. Does if you're a fan of the band, as presumably you are if you're watching this, it's I'm sure we've all wasted money on far less enjoyable, worthwhile purchases than this. Having said that, I can't imagine that I'll be playing it that often. This will not become my go-to Motörhead of choice. But it is what it is. I don't regret it. Again, one does, wonder if maybe they just don't have anything else in the can or something. And you always get the feeling of cash grab when these things come out, especially since all concerned are no longer with us. I don't know. I don't think it offers anything particularly interesting or particularly instructive or insightful. It's nice to listen to. It has historical value. And anyway, there you have it. I was hoping to end this series of reviews on a triumphant note, which I did with Black Magic, and I'm not saying this has taken the gloss off it, for it hasn't. It's it's part of their catalog, but it's a bit of a sideshow. Anyway, please feel free to comment whether you agree or not agree. Do you think I've missed anything? Am I just not getting it? Who knows? And obviously, as well as comment, feel free to share, to subscribe, and to like. And until next time, when, now we've done Motörhead, I'll have to find something else to talk about. Maçhonquèrre.